The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban streets of Riverside as Officer Maya Chen pulled her patrol car behind a sleek black sedan that had rolled through a stop sign. It was her third year on the force, and she'd learned to trust her instincts. Something about this stop felt different. The driver, a well-dressed black man in his early 30s, stepped out of the vehicle with his hands visible, a gesture Maya appreciated but that also made her heart sink a little. She knew what it meant. He'd done this before, been through stops that hadn't gone well. "Good afternoon, sir." "License and registration, please," Maya said, keeping her voice professional but not cold. "Of course, officer." His voice was calm, measured. "They're in my glove compartment. May I reach for them?" "Go ahead." As he retrieved the documents, Mia noticed the wedding band on his finger catching the sunlight. She studied the license. Marcus Thompson, 34, attorney. Address in the nicer part of town. "Mr. Thompson, do you know why I pulled you over?" "I believe I rolled through that stop sign back there." "You're right, I should have come to a complete stop." His honesty caught her off guard. Most people made excuses. This man simply owned his mistake. Maya walked back to her patrol car to run his information. Clean record. Not even a parking ticket. As she sat there, something unusual happened. She found herself hoping she could let him off with a warning. Not because of anything improper, but because something about his respectful demeanor, his straightforward honesty, reminded her of why she'd joined the force in the first place. To serve and protect, not just to punish. When she returned to his window, she'd made up her mind to issue a warning. But as she looked at him again, really looked, she felt something she hadn't expected. This man had kind eyes. Intelligent eyes. And that wedding ring seemed to shine like a beacon. "Mr. Thompson," she began, then paused. What she was about to say was completely unprofessional, possibly career-ending. But she'd always been honest to a fault. "I'm going to give you a warning today. But I have to tell you something, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way." Marcus looked confused. "Ma'am?" Maya took a breath. "If you weren't married, I'd ask you for your number. But you are, and that ring tells me you're exactly the kind of person who'd never disrespect that commitment." She handed him his license back. "Drive safely, Mr. Thompson. And, your wife is a lucky woman." She turned to leave, mortified at what she'd just said, when Marcus called out softly, "Officer Chen?" She turned back, expecting anger or a complaint. Instead, Marcus was smiling, a genuine, warm smile. "Thank you for your honesty. And for the warning. But can I tell you something?" Maya nodded, confused. "I teach a class at the community center on Tuesdays, conflict resolution and communication. We could really use someone with your perspective to speak to the group about police-community relations. Would you be interested?" "It's completely professional, of course." Maya felt her face flush. He wasn't hitting on her or being inappropriate. He was extending an olive branch, turning an awkward moment into an opportunity for something meaningful. Yes. I'd like that." Marcus pulled out a business card. "My office number is on there. The community center director's information is on the back. Give her a call, mention my name. No pressure, but I think you'd be great." 3 weeks later, Maya stood before a room of 20 diverse faces at the Riverside Community Center. Marcus sat in the back row, offering an encouraging nod. She'd been nervous about coming, worried that their first encounter would make things weird. But as she spoke about bridging divides between police and the communities they served, she realized something profound was happening. After the session, an elderly black woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "My grandson was shot by police 5 years ago," she said quietly. "He was reaching for his wallet. Hearing you tonight, it's the first time I've felt like maybe things could change." Maya felt the weight of those words settle on her shoulders. This was bigger than her, bigger than Marcus, bigger than one traffic stop. Over the following months, Maya became a regular speaker at the community center. She brought other officers with her. Marcus facilitated discussions between police and residents, creating safe spaces for hard conversations. They formed an unlikely friendship, professional, respectful, and entirely appropriate, but real nonetheless. Marcus's wife, Jennifer, a pediatric surgeon, even joined one of the sessions. She and Maya bonded over their shared experiences as women in male-dominated professions. Jennifer later told Marcus, with a knowing smile, "She's good for what we're trying to build here. And I can see why you thought to invite her. You always did have good instincts about people." 6 months after that initial traffic stop, the Riverside Police Department asked Maya to help develop a new community outreach program. The chief had heard about her work at the community center and wanted to expand it citywide. Marcus agreed to serve as a civilian advisor. During one of their planning meetings at a coffee shop, Marcus looked at Maya seriously. "Can I tell you something I've never mentioned?" Maya set down her cup. "Of course. That day you pulled me over? I was having the worst week of my life. I'd just lost a major case. A kid I'd been defending pro bono got sent to juvenile detention, and I was questioning whether anything I did made a difference." He paused. "Your honesty, as unprofessional as you thought it was, reminded me that people are still people, even in uniform. You took a risk being vulnerable. That matters. Maya felt her eyes water. I almost got written up for that, you know? My sergeant got wind of it somehow. I had to explain that nothing inappropriate happened, that I was just being human for a second. And what happened? He said, good. We need more human in this department. Then he assigned me to start this outreach program. They both laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from shared understanding and mutual respect. A year after their first meeting, Maya was promoted to sergeant and put in charge of the department's community relations division. Marcus's conflict resolution program had expanded to 3 other community centers. They'd successfully mediated several situations that could have escalated into violence. At the 1-year anniversary celebration of the program, Marcus stood to speak. His wife sat beside him, holding their newborn daughter. A year ago, Marcus began, I got pulled over for rolling through a stop sign. The officer who stopped me did something that, by all the rules, she probably shouldn't have done. She was honest with me. Vulnerably, uncomfortably honest. He looked at Maya, who stood at the side of the room with her fellow officers. That moment of humanity, of seeing past uniforms and badges and skin color to just acknowledge that we're all people trying to do our best, that's what started all of this. Officer Chen took a risk. She was professional when it mattered but human when it counted. The room erupted in applause. Later, as people mingled, Jennifer approached Maya with baby Zara in her arms. Would you like to hold her? Maya carefully took the baby, who looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. Marcus told me what you said that day, Jennifer said softly. About me being lucky. But here's the thing, I am lucky. Not just because of who he is, but because of who he chooses to be. And part of that choice was reaching out to you, building this bridge. She smiled. We're all lucky when people choose to be brave enough to be human with each other. Maya looked down at Zara, then back at Jennifer. Thank you for saying that. I've carried guilt about that moment for a long time. Don't, Jennifer said firmly. Carry pride instead. You started something beautiful. Officer Maya Chen, now Lieutenant Chen, walked through the doors of the newly opened Police Community Partnership Center. The building had been funded by a combination of city resources and private donations, a physical space dedicated to the work that had begun with one awkward traffic stop. Marcus Thompson, whose conflict resolution program had gone statewide, was there for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. His daughter Zara, now 5, held her father's hand and waved enthusiastically at Maya. Lieutenant Chen. Zara called out, breaking free to run toward her. Maya scooped her up. Hey there, little one. Are you ready for the big day? The mayor approached the podium. We're here today because 2 people chose to see each other's humanity first. They chose honesty over protocol, connection over comfort, and building bridges over maintaining walls. As Maya listened, she thought about that afternoon 5 years ago. She'd been so embarrassed by what she'd said, so worried about the consequences. But sometimes the most important moments in our lives come from the risks we take to be genuinely human with each other. After the ceremony, as people toured the new facility, Marcus pulled Maya aside. I need to tell you something I should have said years ago, he said. That day, when you said what you said. I went home and told Jennifer everything. You know what she said? Maya shook her head. She said, she sounds like someone with integrity. You should find a way to work with her. My wife saw what I saw, someone brave enough to be honest even when it might cost them something. Maya felt tears forming. Marcus, this whole thing, everything we've built, it scares me sometimes. What if I hadn't pulled you over that day? What if I'd just written the ticket and moved on? But you didn't, Marcus said simply. You chose differently. We both did. And look what happened. That evening, Maya sat in her apartment, looking at the commendation she'd received that day. Her sergeant, now captain, had presented it to her with a knowing smile. For exemplary service in community relations and for having the courage to be human first, officer second. She thought about all the lives that had been touched by the programs they'd created. The young people who'd learned conflict resolution skills. The officers who'd learned to see community members as partners, not problems. The families who'd learned to see police as people, not just badges, all because one day, she'd let herself be vulnerable enough to speak an uncomfortable truth. Maya pulled out her phone and texted Marcus, "Thank you for taking a chance on someone who broke protocol." His response came quickly, "Thank you for being brave enough to break it. Some rules need bending so better ones can be built." She smiled, set down her phone, and looked out at the city lights of Riverside. Somewhere out there, other officers were making traffic stops, other people were nervous about those interactions, other moments were happening that could go 100 different ways. She hoped that at least a few of them would choose honesty. Choose humanity. Choose to see past the uniforms and the fears to the people underneath, because that's where real change begins, not in policy manuals or political speeches, but in the small, brave moments when we choose to be genuinely human with each other, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable years later. When people asked Maya about the secret to successful community policing, she always told them about that traffic stop. Not because it was a model of perfect professional behavior, it wasn't. But because it taught her something crucial: authenticity builds bridges that protocol alone never can. I'm not saying throw out the rules, she'd explain to new recruits. Rules exist for good reasons. But within those rules, find your humanity. See the person, not just the situation. Be professional, yes, but also be real. Marcus, when speaking at law enforcement conferences, would share the same story from his perspective. That officer could have just written the ticket and moved on. Instead, she took a risk to acknowledge my humanity, and her own. That vulnerability created an opening for connection that changed both our lives. The story of Officer Chen and Marcus Thompson became something of a legend in Riverside. Not because anything romantic or dramatic happened, it didn't. But because it demonstrated something more powerful, that meaningful change often starts with small acts of courage, with choosing honesty over comfort, with seeing people as people first. Jennifer Thompson, when asked about having her husband work so closely with a woman who'd once expressed attraction to him, would laugh. Trust isn't about preventing every possible situation that could be threatening. It's about knowing the character of the person you're with. Maya showed her character that day by respecting my marriage. Marcus showed his by turning an awkward moment into an opportunity to build something good. That's not threatening, that's beautiful. And Zara? As she grew older and understood the story of how her father and Lieutenant Chen had met, she took from it a simple lesson: being honest about your feelings doesn't make you unprofessional, lying about them does. Respecting boundaries doesn't mean suppressing your humanity, it means expressing it appropriately. The Police Community Partnership Center thrived, expanding its programs and becoming a model for other cities. But those who worked there knew the real foundation wasn't the building or the budget or the policies. It was the willingness of two people to see each other truly, to speak honestly even when it was risky, and to build something meaningful from that moment of authentic human connection. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is to be genuinely human, and sometimes the best decisions we make are the ones that scare us a little. The conference room at the National Police Foundation in Washington, D.C. was packed with law enforcement officials from across the country. Commander Maya Chen stood at the podium, her uniform decorated with commendations she'd never imagined receiving when she first joined the force. The silver at her temples reflected the stage lights as she prepared to deliver the keynote address. 10 years ago, she began, I made what many would call a career-ending mistake. The room fell silent. I told a citizen during a traffic stop that I would ask for his phone number if he wasn't married. I violated the professional distance we're taught to maintain. I said something personal, something vulnerable, something that could have been misconstrued in a dozen different ways. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle. That mistake led to the most important work of my life. But it almost didn't happen. Because 3 days after that traffic stop, I was sitting in internal affairs, explaining myself. Maya sat across from Lieutenant Gerald Morrison, a 30-year veteran with a reputation for being strictly by the book. Her hands were folded on the table, steady despite the anxiety churning in her stomach. Officer Chen, Morrison began, reading from a report. We received a complaint from a citizen who overheard your interaction with Mr. Marcus Thompson during a traffic stop. The witness claims you made inappropriate personal comments. Maya's heart sank. She'd known this might come back to haunt her. Sir, I can explain. I don't want an explanation yet. I want the truth. Did you tell Mr. Thompson you would ask for his number if he wasn't married? Yes, sir. I did. Morrison set down the report and looked at her directly. Why? Maya took a breath. This was it, her career might end right here. But she'd been honest with Marcus, she owed the same to Morrison. Because it was true, sir. And because I wanted him to know that despite whatever negative experiences he might have had with law enforcement, I saw him as a human being first. Someone worthy of respect and yes, someone I found interesting. But I also respected his marriage enough to immediately acknowledge that boundary. Officer Chen, do you understand that your personal feelings are irrelevant during a traffic stop? I do, sir. But with respect, I don't think human connection is irrelevant. I think it might be the most relevant thing we've forgotten. Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying her. Mr. Thompson called us yesterday. Maya felt her stomach drop. He called to commend you. He said you treated him with dignity and respect, that you were professional throughout the interaction, and that your honesty was refreshing. He specifically requested that no action be taken against you. Morrison's expression softened slightly. He also mentioned that he's invited you to speak at some community center program? Yes, sir. Conflict resolution classes. I haven't responded yet because of this investigation. The witness who complained is a Mrs. Deborah Finch. She lives on that street and apparently watches the neighborhood like a hawk. She's filed 17 complaints against various officers in the past 3 years. All were unfounded. Morrison closed the file. Officer Chen, you walked a very fine line. What you did was unconventional, possibly inappropriate. But Mr. Thompson's account, combined with your honest testimony here, tells me you didn't cross any actual lines. You're cleared. Maya felt relief wash over her. However, Morrison continued, I want you to do that community center program. In fact, I'm making it an official assignment. Show me that this human connection approach of yours actually works. The community center program had been running for 8 months when everything nearly fell apart. Maya arrived at the center one Tuesday evening to find Marcus waiting outside, his usually calm demeanor replaced with visible tension. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "Jamal Robertson's family is inside. His brother was shot by police last week." Maya felt ice in her veins. She'd heard about the shooting Officer Derek Paulson had fired during a confrontation in the parking lot of a convenience store. The investigation was ongoing, but the community was angry. Protests had been growing. "Does Jamal want me here?" Maya asked. "I don't know. But his mother, Mrs. Robertson, specifically came tonight. She said she needs to hear from an officer who'll tell her the truth." Maya followed Marcus inside, her heart pounding. The room was packed, twice the usual attendance. Mrs. Robertson, a dignified woman in her 60s, sat in the front row, her eyes red from crying but her back straight with determination. Maya stood before the group, acutely aware that one wrong word could explode the fragile trust they'd been building. "I'm not here to defend what happened last week," she began. "I don't know all the details of the shooting. But I'm here to listen, and to be honest with you about what I do know about how things can go wrong." A young man in the back stood up. "Your officer murdered someone's son, and you want to talk about how things go wrong? Like it was some accident?" Maya didn't flinch. "I want to talk about how we got to a place where families fear police, and police fear communities. How we created a system where split-second decisions happen in an atmosphere of mutual distrust. And yes, I want to talk about accountability, real accountability, not just the word we throw around." Mrs. Robertson spoke, her voice quiet but firm. "My son Kenneth didn't have a weapon. He was reaching for his phone to show his ID. Your officer saw a black man reaching into his pocket and fired. How do you build trust when that's our reality?" Maya sat down, deliberately lowering herself to be at eye level with Mrs. Robertson. "Ma'am, I can't give you a reason that will make sense. I can't make this okay. Your son should be alive. I can only tell you that I will push for every policy change, every training improvement, every accountability measure that might prevent this from happening again. But I know that doesn't bring Kenneth back." The room was silent, then Mrs. Robertson said something that changed everything. "Tell me about your training. Tell me exactly what they teach you about situations like the one that killed my son." For the next 2 hours, Maya explained, in detail, the training officers received, the policies they followed, the gaps in those policies, and her own frustrations with a system that often prioritized officer safety over de-escalation. Marcus facilitated, keeping the discussion productive even when emotions ran high. By the end of the night, nothing was resolved. Kenneth Robertson was still dead. But something had shifted. Mrs. Robertson stood and said, "I want to meet with your chief. I want Officer Chen there. And I want to see those training protocols changed." Maya made it happen. The meeting with Police Chief Thomas Bradford and Mrs. Robertson led to the formation of a civilian oversight committee. Maya was assigned as the police liaison. It should have been a triumph, but it made her a target. Officer Derek Paulson, the officer involved in Kenneth Robertson's shooting, was eventually cleared of criminal charges but resigned from the force. His supporters, a vocal group of officers who felt he'd been thrown under the bus, blamed Maya for creating the oversight committee that led to increased scrutiny. One afternoon, as Maya left the station, she found her patrol car's tires slashed. Spray painted on the side, "Traitor." Lieutenant Morrison called her into his office. He'd been promoted to captain and was now Maya's direct supervisor. "Chen, I'm getting pressure from the union. They're saying you're anti-cop, that you're throwing officers to the wolves to score points with activists." He held up a hand before she could speak. "I know it's not true. But I need you to understand, you've got enemies in this department now. Sir, I'm trying to make things better for everyone, including officers. Better training means fewer dangerous situations, I know that. You know that. But fear makes people stupid, and a lot of cops are scared right now. Scared of losing their jobs, scared of ending up like Paulson, scared of being second-guessed on every call." Morrison leaned forward. "I'm assigning you a partner. Detective James Crawford. He's a good cop, been on the force 20 years, and he's respected by both sides of this divide. He'll watch your back." Detective Crawford turned out to be a gruff, no-nonsense cop in his late 40s with a military background. Their first day together was tense. "Let's get something straight," Crawford said as they drove to a call. "I think this touchy-feely community relations stuff is a waste of time. But Captain Morrison says you're solid, and I trust his judgment. So I'll watch your back, but don't expect me to hold hands with citizens at your little center meetings." "Fair enough," Maya replied. "But maybe come to one meeting before you decide it's useless?" Crawford grunted non-committally. 2 weeks later, Crawford showed up at the community center. He sat in the back, arms crossed, skeptical expression firmly in place. Marcus was leading a role-playing exercise where community members practiced de-escalating confrontations with officers played by other attendees. After the session, Crawford approached Maya. "That kid in the blue shirt, the one who played the aggressive officer. He did everything wrong. Bad stance, escalating language, no awareness of surroundings. You could show him the right way," Maya suggested. "I'm not a community relations guy, no, you're a cop with 20 years of experience who knows how to de-escalate situations. That's exactly what these people need to learn. The following week, Detective Crawford became a regular instructor at the center. His gruff, no BS approach actually resonated with participants who were tired of what they saw as empty platitudes. He taught practical skills: how to keep your hands visible during a traffic stop, how to communicate clearly with officers, how to recognize when a situation was becoming dangerous, but he also listened. And gradually, his perspective shifted. One evening, a young man named Dante asked Crawford directly, "Why do you cops always assume we're dangerous?" Crawford was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I've been shot at twice. I've been stabbed once. I've responded to calls where people I thought I could trust turned violent in a heartbeat. So yes, I'm cautious. Maybe too cautious. But I want to go home to my family." "We want to go home to our families too," Dante replied. "But we don't get to carry guns and badges. We just have to hope you don't see us as a threat." That exchange haunted Crawford. Later, he told Maya, "I never thought about it like that. That they're scared too, every single time they see us. Not because they're guilty of something, but because they don't know if this is the cop who'll see them as human or the one who'll see them as a threat." Maya arrived at Marcus's law office for a meeting about expanding their programs to schools. His assistant looked worried as she ushered Maya in. Marcus sat at his desk, staring at a letter, his usually composed face showing cracks of stress. "Marcus? What's wrong?" He handed her the letter. It was from the State Bar Association. A complaint had been filed against him for inappropriate fraternization with law enforcement that compromises his ability to represent clients. "They're trying to take my license," Marcus said quietly. "Some criminal defense attorneys are arguing that my work with the police makes me unable to zealously represent defendants. They say I've become too cozy with cops." Maya felt anger surge through her. "That's ridiculous. You're building bridges, not compromising your ethics. Tell that to the 3 clients who fired me this month. Or the public defender's office that withdrew their offer for me to teach a criminal justice reform class." Marcus rubbed his face. "Jennifer thinks I should stop the community center work until this blows over. And what do you think? I think if I stop, then everyone who says change is impossible wins. But Maya, I can't lose my license. My family depends on that income. Zara's only 4 years old. Jennifer's job is stable, but we have a mortgage, student loans." They sat in silence for a moment. "Let me help," Maya finally said. "I'll testify at the hearing. I'll show them exactly what you've been doing, the lives you've saved through this work, the situations that didn't escalate because people had learned conflict resolution, You'd do that? Even though testifying for a defense attorney at a bar hearing would probably make your enemies in the department even angrier? Marcus, you put yourself on the line when you called to support me during my IA investigation. You've risked your reputation for this work. I'm not going to let you face this alone." The bar hearing was brutal. 3 attorneys testified that Marcus's community work with police constituted a conflict of interest. They produced examples of cases where Marcus had supposedly given law enforcement the benefit of the doubt in ways that harmed his clients' interests. Then Maya took the stand. "Mr. Thompson has never compromised his principles," she testified. "He's pushed me and my department harder than any defense attorney ever has to change our policies, our training, our approach to communities we serve. He's held us accountable in ways that are actually more challenging than the adversarial system, because he forces us to confront our failures directly and personally." She looked at the panel of judges. If anything, Marcus Thompson's work has made him a better advocate for his clients, because he understands both sides of these encounters. He knows what police are thinking and can use that knowledge to protect his clients' rights more effectively. Detective Crawford, who had asked to testify voluntarily, backed up her claims. "Thompson grills me harder than any cross-examination I've ever faced. He doesn't give cops a pass, he makes us better. There's a difference." Marcus kept his license, but the ordeal left its mark. One evening at the community center, after a particularly challenging session, he confided in Maya and Crawford. "Sometimes I wonder if we're just tilting at windmills," he said. "We've built these programs, changed some policies, built some relationships. But Kenneth Robertson is still dead. Derek Paulson is still a free man. The system that created that tragedy is still largely intact." Crawford surprised them both by responding. "My daughter is 16. Last month, she got pulled over for a broken taillight. She texted me, panicked, asking what to do. And you know what I told her? I told her to use the techniques we teach here. Stay calm, hands visible, clear communication. And she did. The officer gave her a warning and recommended a good mechanic." He paused. "Then I realized, if my own daughter needs to use de-escalation techniques during a routine traffic stop, something is deeply wrong with how we do this job. But at least she had those skills because of what we've built here. That's not nothing." The call came at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Active shooter at Riverside High School. All available units respond. Maya and Crawford were 3 minutes away. They arrived to chaos, students streaming out of buildings, parents trying to get past police barriers, the sound of gunfire from inside the school. As they prepared to enter with the tactical team, Maya saw a familiar face in the crowd. Dante, the young man who'd challenged Crawford years ago at the community center, was standing at the barrier, his face stricken with fear. "My little brother's in there," he shouted. "Third floor, Mr. Harrison's classroom." The tactical team went in. 20 minutes later, the shooting stopped. The gunman, a 15-year-old student named Tyler Brennan, had barricaded himself in a classroom with 4 hostages, including Dante's brother. The negotiator was stuck in traffic. Commander Bradford, now chief, made a decision. "Chen, you've got negotiation training. We need someone to make contact now. Crawford, you're with her." They approached the classroom door. Maya could hear crying inside. "Tyler," she called out. "My name is Maya. I'm with the Riverside Police. I need to know if anyone's hurt in there." "Stay back." A young voice, cracking with fear and rage. "I'll shoot them. I swear I'll do it. Tyler, I believe you. I'm not coming in. I just want to talk. Can you tell me what's happening?" Silence. Then, nobody listened. Nobody cared. They kept pushing and calling me names and making videos, and I couldn't take it anymore. Maya's heart raced. She glanced at Crawford, who was already on his radio coordinating with the team outside. "Tyler, it sounds like you've been really hurt. Like people have been cruel to you. You don't know anything." "You're right, I don't. But I want to understand. Help me understand what pushed you to this point." For the next 40 minutes, Maya talked with Tyler. She learned about relentless bullying, about administrators who dismissed his complaints, about parents too busy to notice his pain. She learned about a broken kid who'd brought his father's gun to school thinking it was the only way to make the pain stop, and slowly, incrementally, she built trust. "Tyler, I know you're scared. I know you feel like there's no way out of this. But I promise you, I personally promise you, that if you put down the gun and let those kids go, I will make sure your story gets heard. I will make sure the people who hurt you are held accountable." "You're lying. You're just saying that to trick me. I've never lied to you in this conversation, Tyler. I'm not going to start now. Yes, I want those hostages safe. Yes, I want you to put down the gun. But I also want you to live, because you deserve a future that's better than this moment." More silence. Then, a crash and shouting from inside the room. One of the hostages had tried to escape, startling Tyler. A gunshot rang out. The tactical team breached the door. Maya rushed in behind them and saw Tyler on the floor, gun dropped, sobbing. The hostages were huddled in the corner, terrified but alive. The gunshot had gone into the ceiling. AS officers secured Tyler. Maya knelt beside him. "Tyler, look at me. You didn't kill anyone. You stopped yourself. That matters." At the hospital later, she sat with Dante as his brother was treated for minor injuries, scrapes from diving under a desk, nothing serious. "Thank you," Dante said quietly. "For talking to him instead of just, going in guns blazing?" "Yeah. That's what we're trying to change, Dante. Not every situation needs to end with violence. Sometimes people just need to be heard." The school shooting became national news, but the narrative was unusual. Instead of focusing solely on the tragedy, the story highlighted the negotiation, the de-escalation, the fact that everyone had survived. Media outlets interviewed Maya about her approach. During one interview, she said, "I learned how to really listen, how to see the humanity in people even in their worst moments, from a community program started after a traffic stop. That program taught me that every interaction is an opportunity to either escalate or de-escalate, to build trust or destroy it." Tyler Brennan needed someone to hear his pain, not just respond to his violence. The interviewer asked, "But he shot at students, fired at a ceiling. Isn't that the moment police should use force? Could we have? Yes. Should we have rushed in immediately? Maybe, if the situation was actively lethal. But we had a few minutes to try talking first. And those few minutes saved lives, including Tyler's." The mother of one of Tyler Brennan's bullying victims filed a lawsuit against the police department, claiming that Maya's negotiation had endangered the hostages unnecessarily and that Tyler should have been shot on sight. The lawsuit named Maya personally, seeking damages and her termination. The narrative painted her as a soft officer who prioritized a shooter's feelings over victims' safety. It was a nightmare. Maya faced depositions, public criticism, and renewed attacks from the faction of officers who had never accepted her approach. Her face was plastered across conservative news outlets with headlines like "Cop Cuddles School Shooter Instead of Protecting Children." Jennifer Thompson, Marcus's wife, reached out to Maya during this time. They met for coffee, something they'd done occasionally over the years, but this felt different. More urgent. "I've been following the lawsuit," Jennifer said. "Marcus is ready to testify on your behalf, but I wanted to talk to you first. As a doctor and as a friend." "I'm okay," Maya said automatically. "No, you're not. I can see it. You're carrying everyone else's trauma on top of your own, and you're not processing it." Jennifer leaned forward. "I treat children who've experienced violence. I see PTSD all the time. You have symptoms, Maya. Maya felt tears she'd been holding back for months suddenly threatened to spill. I keep replaying it. What if I'd said something different? What if Tyler had shot one of those kids? What if you'd rushed in and Tyler had panicked and killed someone? What if you hadn't tried talking and he'd died? You can't live in the what-ifs. Jennifer reached across the table and squeezed Maya's hand. But you do need to process what actually happened. Have you talked to anyone? A therapist? Peer support? I can't. If it gets out that I'm in therapy, it'll be used against me in the lawsuit. They'll say I'm mentally unstable, not fit for duty. So they win twice? They traumatize you through this lawsuit and prevent you from healing? That's not acceptable. Jennifer pulled out a business card. This is a colleague of mine. She specializes in first responder trauma and works completely confidentially. You need this, Maya. You can't pour from an empty cup. Maya started therapy. It helped, slowly, to unpack not just the school shooting but years of accumulated stress, threats, and the weight of trying to change a resistant system. The lawsuit eventually failed. Tyler's public defender, ironically one of the attorneys who'd gone after Marcus's license, testified that Maya's approach had been textbook crisis negotiation. The hostages themselves testified that they'd felt safer with Maya talking Tyler down than they would have if police had stormed the room, but the damage was done. Maya was exhausted, burned out, questioning whether this work was worth the personal cost. Maya sat in Chief Bradford's office, her letter of resignation on his desk. I can't keep doing this, she said. Every step forward comes with 10 attacks. Every life I save gets overshadowed by criticism from people who think I should have used more force. I'm tired, Chief. I'm so tired. Bradford read the letter, then set it down. You know I can't accept this. With respect, sir, you don't have a choice. I'm done. Let me tell you a story, Commander Chen. Bradford leaned back in his chair. 30 years ago, I was a young officer who thought the job was simple: enforce the law, catch bad guys, go home. Then I killed a man during a domestic violence call. He came at me with a knife, I fired, he died. Completely justified shoot. He paused. His daughter was hiding in the closet. She was 8 years old. She watched me kill her father. And you know what I learned from my captain afterwards? Nothing. He told me good shoot and sent me back on patrol. No counseling, no processing, just move on. Sir, I don't. That little girl grew up and became a police reform advocate. She contacted me 5 years ago, wanted to talk. I almost didn't go. But I did, and she told me that watching her father die taught her that police see violence as the only solution. She spent her life trying to change that. Bradford looked at Maya directly. You're doing what I wish I'd been able to do 30 years ago. You're proving there's another way. If you quit, you're telling everyone who opposes this approach that they're right, that it's too hard, that it's not worth it. But what if they are right? Maya's voice broke. What if I'm just a naive idealist who's going to get someone killed because I hesitated to use force when I should have? Tyler Brennan is alive because you hesitated. Those hostages are alive because you hesitated. How many lives have been saved by officers who attended your training and learned to de-escalate instead of escalate? How many kids like Dante's brother grew up knowing at least one cop who saw them as human? Bradford stood and handed her resignation letter back to her. Take a month off. Full pay, administrative leave for mental health. See your therapist, spend time with people you love, remember why you became a cop in the first place. Then decide. Maya took the month. She spent time with her family, parents who'd immigrated from Taiwan decades ago and who were both proud and terrified of their daughter's dangerous, controversial career. She hiked, read books that had nothing to do with policing, and slowly began to feel like herself again. 2 weeks into her leave, Marcus called. I need a favor. Or rather, someone else does. Marcus, I'm on leave, I know. But there's a young woman, Keisha Morris, who's about to graduate from the police academy. She specifically asked to meet you. She said you're the reason she decided to become a cop. They met at a quiet coffee shop. Keisha was 23, earnest, and nervous. Commander Chen, I was one of those kids at Riverside High. I was in the building when Tyler Brennan started shooting. Keisha's hands trembled slightly as she held her coffee cup. I heard you talking to him through that door. I heard you treating him like a person, even though he'd just been shooting at us. And I thought, that's who I want to be. Someone who can see past the violence to the person underneath. Keisha, that's a beautiful sentiment, but you need to understand, being that person is incredibly hard. People will criticize you, sue you, call you weak, I know. I've been following your case. But Commander, I also know that Tyler Brennan got treatment instead of a coffin because of you. He's in a juvenile facility getting therapy, working through his trauma, and he has a chance at a life. The kids who bullied him are in counseling too, learning about the consequences of their actions. None of that happens if you shoot first. Keisha leaned forward. I want to join your unit. I want to learn from you. And I know there are others like me, young officers who want to do this job differently. But if you quit, who's going to teach us? Maya felt something shift inside her. The exhaustion was still there, but so was something else. Purpose. Hope. The knowledge that the work mattered. She returned Chief Bradford's office before her month was even up. "I'm not quitting," she said. "But I need things to change. More resources for officer mental health. Mandatory de-escalation training for all officers, not just community relations. And I want Keisha Morris assigned to my unit when she graduates." Bradford smiled. "Done. Welcome back, Commander." Back at the National Police Foundation conference, Maya finished her story. The room was silent, hanging on every word. "That traffic stop 10 years ago didn't just change my life," she concluded. "It started a chain reaction that's changed hundreds of lives." Tyler Brennan is now 25 years old. He's studying psychology, working with at-risk youth, trying to prevent other kids from following his path. Keisha Morris is a sergeant in my unit, running school safety programs that focus on relationship building rather than enforcement. She clicked to her final slide, a photo of the original community center group from 10 years ago, now grown into a formal organization with chapters in 12 cities. Marcus Thompson is here today. He's going to speak after me about civilian perspectives on police reform. Detective James Crawford, who thought this was all touchy-feely nonsense 10 years ago, now runs our de-escalation training program. And Mrs. Robertson, who lost her son Kenneth to a police shooting, is on the civilian oversight board that's transformed how our department operates. Maya paused, letting her gaze sweep across the hundreds of law enforcement officials in the audience. Change is possible. But it requires us to be willing to be vulnerable, to admit when we're wrong, to build relationships with the communities we serve. It requires us to see people first, situations second. It requires us to take risks, like I did when I spoke honestly to Marcus Thompson during that traffic stop. She smiled. "I almost lost my career for it. Multiple times. But I'd do it again in a heartbeat, because that one moment of authentic human connection created ripples that are still spreading. You all have the power to create those ripples in your own communities. The question is, are you brave enough to be human first?" The applause was thunderous. That evening, Maya, Marcus, Crawford, and Jennifer sat together at a restaurant near the conference center. Keisha had joined them, along with Dante, now a social worker, and surprisingly, Mrs. Robertson, who had traveled to DC specifically to support Maya's presentation. 10 years, Marcus mused, raising his glass. 10 years since a cop pulled me over and accidentally started a revolution. "It wasn't an accident," Jennifer corrected gently. "You both chose to see each other as people. That's always a choice." Mrs. Robertson, who had been quiet through dinner, finally spoke. "Kenneth would be 32 now. He should be here. I want everyone to remember that, this work, all these programs and policies and changed lives, they're beautiful. But my son is still gone." The table fell silent. "You're right," Maya said softly. "And I never want to present this work as if it makes up for losses like Kenneth. It doesn't. Nothing does. But," Mrs. Robertson continued, her voice stronger, "how many mothers haven't lost their sons because of what you've all built? How many Kenneths are alive because officers learned different ways to handle situations? That matters too. Both things are true, my grief and my gratitude." Crawford, gruff as ever, cleared his throat. "When I started working with Maya, I thought she was naive. I thought the real world was too dangerous for her approach. You know what changed my mind?" Everyone looked at him. "I stopped shooting people. Not because I went soft, but because I learned better ways to read situations, to de-escalate, to create time and space for better outcomes. 20 years on the force before Maya, I'd been in 3 officer-involved shootings. 10 years working with her? None. Not because I got lucky, but because I got better at my job. That's what people don't understand," Keisha added. "They think de-escalation means we're not protecting ourselves. But we're actually safer when communities trust us, when people don't see us as the enemy, when we can talk our way through situations instead of fighting through them." Dante nodded. "And we're safer too. Young black men like me, we're safer when cops like you are out there instead of the ones who shot Kenneth. Both things can be true, police need to be safe, and so do we. It's not zero-sum." Marcus held up his glass again. "To 10 years. To everyone who took risks to build something better. To those we lost along the way. And to the next 10 years. They clinked glasses, a small circle of people who had somehow become family through shared struggle and commitment to change. 6 months after the conference, Maya received an invitation to speak at the Riverside Police Academy graduation. In the audience was a young cadet named Tyler Brennan Jr. Tyler Sr., the school shooter Maya had talked down 9 years ago, had named his son after himself as a deliberate choice, a reminder that people could change, could grow beyond their worst moments. Tyler Sr. had completed his sentence in juvenile detention, earned his GED, graduated from college, and become a counselor working with troubled youth. The younger Tyler wanted to become a cop. After the ceremony, Tyler Sr. approached Maya nervously. They'd stayed in occasional contact over the years, but this was the first time they'd spoken in person since that day at the high school. "I don't know if I should thank you or apologize," Tyler said. "You saved my life that day, gave me a chance to become someone different. But I put you through hell because of it. Tyler, you were a kid in crisis who made terrible choices. But you didn't become those choices. That's what matters. My son wants to be like you, Tyler said. He wants to be the kind of cop who gives people chances. Is that okay? I mean, is it okay that the kid of a school shooter wants to be police? Maya looked at Tyler Jr., who was laughing with Keisha and other graduates. Your son isn't responsible for your past. If he wants to serve his community, if he's got the right heart and the right training, then yes. It's more than okay. It's beautiful. Tyler Sr. wiped his eyes. I teach the kids I work with that one moment doesn't define your life. That you can grow beyond your trauma, your mistakes, your worst day. But I still struggle to believe it about myself. Then let your son believe it for you, Maya said. Let him show you what grace looks like from the other side. Late that night, Maya sat at her desk at home, looking at a letter she'd written but never sent. It was addressed to herself, dated 10 years ago, written as an exercise in therapy. Dear Maya, I know you're scared right now. You just told a citizen something you probably shouldn't have, and you're worried it will cost you your career. But here's what I need you to know from 10 years in the future, that moment of honesty will be the most important professional decision you ever make. Not because it was perfect, it wasn't. Not because it followed protocol, it didn't. But because it reminded you that underneath the uniform, you're still human. And humans connect with other humans through vulnerability and truth. You're going to face investigations, lawsuits, death threats, and moments where you question everything. You're going to be called a traitor by other cops and a collaborator by activists. You're going to stand in the gap between two sides that both think you're the enemy. Do it anyway, because here's what else happens. Tyler Brennan lives. Dante's brother comes home safe. Keisha Morris becomes the cop you wish you'd had when you were starting out. Crawford learns to see people before threats. Mrs. Robertson finds purpose in her grief. And Marcus Thompson becomes family. The work isn't finished. It never will be. But it matters. You matter. Your willingness to be imperfect and honest and vulnerable matters more than you can imagine right now. Keep going. Stay human, love, your future self. Maya folded the letter and put it in.